Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Welcome back to Sada Education. We have heard recently that Russia is opening its economy to Islamic banking. And this is a very good news for the Islamic finance industry. I presume that Russia have already its satellite state, Tatarstan, has a well-developed Islamic finance sector, so that will help Russia to initiate the uh, Islamic banking project. Of course, there will be some other players who will be coming in to assist the Russian economy. But then the idea here is when we look at any entity that is using the Islamic label to undertake a project, one of which is Islamic banking, that will attract Muslim into the business because the business carry an Islamic label, and therefore Muslim consumer would be more comfortable with the new entity that provide an Islamic finance service, and of course that is compliant to Shariah principle, and therefore any of this entity that is using the Islamic label must be able to evidence or to prove that they are actually doing the right thing. This is because some of the Muslim people, they purposely exclude themselves from conventional banking because of the Riba issue. They prefer to keep their money under the pillow. But when we have Islamic banking established all over the country, then these people will come in to put their money with the bank, and this is how the bank would be able to use these so-called surpluses and able to make loan and financing to undertake the normal banking business. And therefore, when we look at this process of Islamic banking initiative, whereby we expect to see some form of evidence that the bank are doing the right thing, and we would assume that the Islamic bank is well regulated, and there are supervision and monitoring through robust Shariah governance program, and therefore the bank should be able to run their business based on Islamic principle. And therefore, when we are here to assess the performance of the Islamic banking, so there are two components that we can use to assess how the Islamic banking is impacting the economy or impacting the people in general. Number one, we have to see the Sharia compliance, component of the Islamic banking development, because this is the yardstick to ensure that the bank has properly observed the Sharia principle or Islamic law. And many countries, that is running the Islamic banking business have their own respective Sharia parameter to evidence that the banking business have actually observed the Sharia or Islamic law. So I will give you about 4 Sharia parameters that is currently being used in Malaysia. So number one is that the contracts, the transaction and dealings in the banking operation must be in accordance with Shariah principles. So whatever contract that the bank uses to attract deposits, for example, or to extend financing, then it must be in accordance with Shariah rule, transaction as well as dealing, so that these are free from the prohibitive element of riba, of gharar, of maisir, gambling, and the transaction involving prohibited commodity. So this is the most important parameter to comply with, ensuring that all of the business contract and transaction and dealing are in line with Shariah principle. And so we have to make sure that these contracts are properly administered. The transaction, who are the counterparties, and how much, what kind of business is implicated in the transaction and dealing. So these are all area that must be properly looked into when we get into the Islamic banking operation. Secondly, the distribution of profit and loss to the investment account have been accorded with Shariah principle. So the investment account is an equity account, and therefore it is subjected to profit and losses, and therefore distribution of profit and losses must be disclosed properly, so that we know how the investment account has performed, and the bank really observe the rule of the investment, that is the sharing of profit and losses. As we know that in the Islamic bank we got deposit fund as well as investment fund, and these two funds are now segregated. Deposit fund is basically a loan or debt, where the bank would if the bank is using deposit fund to make murabaha, then the bank will carry the risk in murabaha. So if the bank is using investment account fund to make murabaha, then the risk of the murabaha will be assumed by the investment account holder. So these are two different categories of fund. Derecognition of non-halal income. This is, of course, if the bank discovered that some of the prevailing contract are not permissible due to the injury or any impairment of the contract that was not found earlier. And normally the Sharia review officer would be doing this, and if such transaction were discovered as non-halal, so any of the income generated earlier will have to be derecognized, so that the P&L and the ROE eventually are fully pure to be distributed to the shareholders. And zakat obligation of banks. This is again, banks, Islamic bank must pay their zakat, and this can be computed based on certain methodologies. Who are the recipient and what sort of, how much has been distributed to which recipient. So all of this zakat distribution will have to be disclosed and reported by the bank. And finally will be the reporting of Shariah non-compliance event. The bank is required to report to the central bank over any of the banking operation that are found to be non-compliant with the Sharia rule. We can see that there can be many of these events due to negligence, due to lapses, and therefore this event that may cause losses to the bank need to be reported to the central bank, and the bank need to provide some rectification plan in order to remedy the issue. All right, so these are the the Sharia compliance component that must be disclosed to the general public in order to evidence that the operation of the bank is based on full compliance to Sharia and Islamic law. All right. So for the second part on banking performance, we will continue it in the next program. Thank you very much. Please don't forget to comment and to share and to subscribe. Bye-bye. Assalamualaikum.